So, everyone's racing to adopt AI, right? But here's the thing. It's causing massive disruption because, honestly, most companies are using a totally outdated playbook. We're going to dig into why the focus has to shift from just chasing a simple return on investment to creating real, lasting growth.
All right, let's just start with a pretty shocking number from McKinsey. A staggering 70% of digital transformations fail. Think about that. 7 out of 10 massive, expensive company-wide projects just don't work out. That incredibly high failure rate really sets a grim stage for what's happening with AI right now.
And the cost isn't just in dollars and cents. The U.S. Department of Labor found that during these chaotic transformations, we lose 3.6 hours of productivity per employee per day. That is nearly half the workday just vanishing into thin air, into all that confusion and inefficiency.
And on top of all that, companies are making these knee-jerk decisions about their people that they often end up regretting. A recent study showed that 55% of companies now admit they've made mistakes with AI-related layoffs. And that's not just a statistic, That represents broken trust, lost knowledge, and it just feeds into even more chaos.
So when you start connecting these dots, the failures, the lost time, the workforce mistakes, a really clear picture starts to form. This isn't just about a simple software update. We are smack in the middle of a fundamental AI adaptation problem. All these things are just symptoms of a much, much deeper issue. So, what's really going on?
Well, part of the problem is that the whole AI landscape today feels kind of like the Wild West of the early internet. Remember that? We've got a ton of early players, the AltaVistas and the InfoSeeks of AI. But there's no clear, dominant Google yet. And that uncertainty makes it incredibly hard for any business to try and pick a winner for the long haul and build a stable strategy around it. And this brings us to the absolute core of the problem. The reason so many companies are failing isn't because the AI technology is flawed. No. It's because they're measuring it with the wrong tool. That traditional return on investment, or ROI lens, it is completely outdated for what AI 2.0 is all about.
This really requires a massive shift in thinking. See, a traditional digital transformation was about upgrading your tools so you could do the same old things just a little bit better or faster. But AI adaptation, that's more like a merger and acquisition. You're not just buying a piece of software. You're integrating an entirely new capability with its own culture, its own logic, right into the DNA of your company.
And if you keep thinking through that old ROI lens, you fall into 3 major traps. First, when everybody is jumping into AI, the advantage isn't that you jumped, it's the direction you jumped in that matters. Second, a strict ROI focus almost always leads to using AI for cost-cutting, which just throws you into a brutal race to the bottom with all your competitors. And finally, since everyone is doing it, your only real competitive edge comes down to how you adapt.
Okay, so if ROI is the wrong way to look at this, what's the right way? Well, a really powerful way to think about it is with a super simple analogy. We need to go from thinking about shoes to thinking about synergies.
Let me explain. A few hundred years ago, a family might own 1, maybe 2 pairs of shoes. The whole market was tiny, and it served just one purpose. But then, as technology and our lifestyles changed, suddenly we got boots and high heels, sneakers, sandals. It was an explosion of new categories. Shoes went from being a single product to this vast multi-dimensional market.
So, the old ROI mindset asks, how do we make this one pair of shoes that we already have, but just cheaper and faster? It's all about optimizing what exists. But what we need now is ROG, or return on growth, thinking. That perspective asks a totally different question. What new kinds of shoes could even exist, and what new markets could they create?
And that right there is the entire game. We have to stop obsessing over cost synergies, just saving a little money with AI. The real winners, the ones who will dominate the next decade, are those who use AI to uncover brand new revenue synergies, creating value in markets that literally did not exist before.
Now that all sounds great in theory, but how do you actually do it? Let's get practical and look at an actionable plan. It's called the Realize framework, and it's a structured approach designed specifically for this new era of AI.
Realize is a 7-step process. It starts with R, for reveal the true jobs your customers need done. Not just what your product does now, but the deep down problem they're trying to solve. Then E, you envision the future that AI makes possible, thinking way bigger than just small tweaks. A is for assess. You've got to honestly assess your company's culture to see if it can handle this kind of change. L means lead with powerful stories and narratives to get everybody excited and on board. From there, I, you initiate small, fast pilots to learn quickly. Z is for zoom in on augmenting your people's skills, not just replacing them. And finally, E, you evolve constantly by building in really tight feedback loops to guide the whole thing.
What makes this framework so powerful is really the philosophy behind it. It uses a future-back approach, meaning you decide on the future you want and then you work backward from there. It is laser-focused on finding those new market dimensions, just like we talked about with the shoe analogy. And, crucially, it treats culture not as some fuzzy barrier, but as a system you can actually align, empowering your middle managers to be the ones who drive the change.
And you know, this powerful framework wasn't just pulled out of thin air. It was actually developed by the specialists over at Satir AI Adaptation Advisory. They designed it specifically to navigate the crazy complexities of this AI 2.0 world. So as we start to bring this all home, it's really time to apply these lessons. We've laid out the problem, we've busted the myth of the old way of thinking, and we've walked through a new framework for success. The next step is for you to rethink your AI future.
And in the end, it all comes down to this one simple question. Is your company's AI strategy a defensive move, one that's just focused on cutting costs and getting into that race to the bottom? Or is it an offensive one, aimed at creating entirely new forms of value, new products and new markets? Because honestly, the answer to that question is going to define who wins and who gets left behind.